Thank you, Rupert. So speaking of simplicity, and also speaking of various spiritual traditions, one that I've stumbled upon is Douglas Harding's Headless Way. And so that's, I think it's important for me to ask if you're familiar with it.
I am, another eccentric Englishman, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
I figured you were, but
yeah.
for those reasons.
I hide my eccentricity more successfully than he does. He was a little more out than I am.
But if you don't mind, you're both, I would also describe both of you as humble and quite brilliant. So I'm, as a tool for investigation and as a tool for awakening, I'm curious about not only your thoughts about it, but also how to put it in context of your understanding and your offerings.
How to put Douglas Harding's work in the context of this. So let me give you my version of Douglas Harding's beautiful, quirky exercise. So would you agree, first of all, that yourself, whatever yourself is present now?
Yes.
So in order to investigate yourself, you don't need to reach into your past.
Yes.
Okay, so in order to facilitate this, imagine that you don't have a memory. That just prevents you from reaching into your past in search of yourself. So would you agree that yourself is equally present when your eyes are open and when they are closed?
Could you repeat that?
Would you agree that yourself, whatever exactly yourself is equally present whether your eyes are open or closed? Please just say yes.
Yes. I did when people were laughing, yes.
Good. Okay. In that case, close your eyes. Make no reference to your past. And tell us about yourself. Exactly. I just stopped you spoiling it.
Actually, thank you for doing that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I can cope with that. That's.
I was going to start parroting because there aren't. Right.
No, but what your response, your silent response was the truest thing you could have said. And that's my version of Douglas Harding's experiment. Same understanding, different pathway. He went through an experiment in perception. I went through an experiment in thought. Two different pathways, the same recognition.
I want to keep pressing you on this. So do you find that to be useful? I mean, it's true.
Yes,
it's very true.
I find it useful to know, to feel, to understand that what I essentially am is present and aware, that it remains always the same, that it has no limits and therefore cannot be divided, that it doesn't come and go, that it's not subject to the conditions of experience. Yes, I find that, to call it useful would be a little pedantic, but I find it utterly beautiful. It takes me to love and beauty over and over and over again. Yes, it's very useful. It's just, these are just two ways of recognizing what we essentially are. I mean, does not your whole life revolve around yourself?
It sure seems to.
Could there therefore be anything more important to know the nature of the one on whose behalf your thoughts and feelings arise and in whose service your activities and relationships are undertaken? Could you imagine anything more important to know than that? And given that all of our thoughts and feelings arise on behalf of ourself, given that all our activities and relationships are undertaken on behalf of ourself, our recognition of who we are has a profound effect on our thoughts and feelings and our subsequent activities and relationships. So it's not just an interesting intellectual game. It is the most important thing to know in life. To know the nature of that through which everything else is known. I mean, can you suggest something that is more important than that? Would it be possible to know anything for certain about the known without first knowing the nature of the one who knows?
Well, I could say that I know this is perception, but I know that like those chairs are brown. It doesn't seem like I have to know the knowing.
How do you know those chairs are brown? If your mind was configured just slightly differently, they would appear red or blue or orange.
Right.
Oh, are the chairs brown, or is it in your mind the brown?
Right, it is through
You
conditioning.
see, you're not quite as sure that the chairs are brown as you thought you were. That's the first thing that we discover, that the world that we thought we knew so well, actually, we don't know anything about it at all. Because everything we know about it is filtered through the limitations of the mind through which it is known. How do we know that what we perceive as the world is not simply how reality, whatever reality is, appears to our limited point of view and through the limitations of perception? In fact, we can be absolutely certain that it is. So, were it not for one fact, it would not be possible to know anything about the world. All we could know would be about our perceptions. And this is what Kant believed, that it's not possible to know the nature of the thing in itself, because all we are ever aware of are our perceptions of the thing in itself. But he missed a simple but crucial point. He missed the fact that whatever he was as a person emanated from the world, which he said was unknowable. So if he thinks that the world is unknowable, and if he understood, as he obviously did, that he as a person emerged from that world, then to say the world is unknowable is tantamount to saying myself is unknowable. And that's what he missed. It's true, it's not possible to know the nature of the world out there, because everything we know of that world is filtered through the limitations of perception. But there is one aspect of the world that we do have direct, immediate access to. When I say immediate, I mean not mediated through the senses. And that is ourself. We have direct knowledge, not indirect, mediated knowledge. The awareness of being is being's direct knowledge of itself. And he missed that. So he thought that it was not possible to know the reality of the world. But if we, as apparently separate people, emerge from the world, then whatever the reality of that we are must be the reality of the world, just as the reality of the wave and the reality of the ocean must be the same thing, because the wave is an emanation of the ocean. So to know the nature of the ocean, it's not necessary to study the whole ocean. It's only necessary to study the wave, to study a drop. If you know the nature of a drop, you know the nature of the ocean. There is one aspect of reality, there is one aspect of experience that we have direct access to, that is ourself, the awareness of being. And so if we make this investigation into the nature of ourself, we discover just being, infinite, ever-present, self-aware being. That's what all the great non-dual traditions say, that what we essentially are and what the world essentially is are the same. That's why scientists, sooner or later, will have to, if they want to know the reality of the world, sooner or later they'll have to turn around and recognize the nature of their own minds. That's the only way we can have direct, immediate access to the reality of the world.
I got that, Rupert. Thank you very much.
I understand the ultimate reality, pure consciousness, as I understand it as stillness, because I cannot describe it. But my question is, how does this illusion, which appears to be very intelligent, come about from something? I'm just using these words because I don't have the right words, but how does this intelligent illusion come about from no-thingness, from this stillness? How did this grand illusion come about? Even these forms come about. The form that I have, everybody has. How does this limitation arise from limitlessness?
So let me try to give you a model, an analogy, which is of course not completely accurate. There are no accurate models of reality, but it's as close as I can get to answer your question. Without saying I don't know, which is the real answer. Imagine an ocean at rest. No currents, no waves, no movements, just a mass, a homogeneous mass of undifferentiated, motionless water, no form. And then imagine this ocean were to spontaneously shudder within itself. And its entire surface would, as a result, begin to ripple. And the ripples would all begin to interact, and combine and separate and interact with one another. And these ripples would give form to something that was primordially formless. So the formless would have taken a temporary form to which we then give a name. So name and form arises out of the formless. Now, in this case, the ocean, of course, is the ocean of consciousness. So it's not an inert ocean made out of water. It's an alive ocean made out of pure knowing, pure consciousness, with no thing that is known. It is just pure knowing. So when this pure knowing shudders within itself and ripples begin to form on its surface, each of these ripples has a particular form. It is an apparent limit of the original limitless ocean of consciousness. Now, each of these ripples would represent a limited version of the ocean, a finite mind. Now, because this finite mind is made of pure knowing, the infinite consciousness, and yet it has a name and a form, so it is a finite mind made only of infinite consciousness. But because it is finite, everything that it knows is now filtered through its own limitations. So the finite mind, the finite ripple, can no longer know the formless ocean, because everything that it knows is filtered through its limitations. Therefore, all it can know are limitations, objects. It cannot know the objectless. So when this ripple on the surface of the ocean looks out at the ocean, it doesn't see the formless ocean, because it cannot, something with a form cannot see the formless. It sees the ocean in a way that is consistent with its own limitations. It sees all the other ripples in a way that is consistent with the configuration of its own particular ripple. So what appears to this single ripple as a multiplicity and diversity of forms is in fact the movement of the one ocean. But the ripple can't see that, because it sees everything in a way that is consistent with its own limitations. So it sees multiplicity and diversity. But all there is to that multiplicity and diversity is the single formless ocean. Well, each of us is one of the ripples on the surface of infinite consciousness, one of the finite minds. And because our finite minds are, a human finite mind consists of thinking and perceiving, so everything we experience of the ocean, of the activity of consciousness, we experience it through the glasses, so to speak, of our finite mind. So our finite minds are, I'm just mixing my metaphors now, the finite mind is like a virtual reality headset that consciousness puts on. The moment it puts on this VR headset made out of thinking and perceiving, it perceives its own activity as the universe, as multiplicity and diversity. There's no real multiplicity and diversity in the universe. That's why it's called a universe. It's only one thing. What is that one thing? It is not a thing, it is consciousness. But its activity appears to a limited mind as the world that we perceive. The multiplicity and diversity that we perceive is not in the universe. It is in the means through which we look.
So this intelligence that appears to be all around us, there's a process to it. For example, there's a fruit with seeds in it, so it has the ability to carry on, life. A woman has a potential to have a child, so the human race keeps going on. So it is very intelligent illusion that comes about.
It's not the illusion that is intelligent, it's the consciousness that is the reality of the illusion that is intelligent. And that intelligence is reflected in the illusory world as the kind of intelligence that you're describing. So this intelligence, what you call the intelligence of duality, is a reflection of the original, and it all points to the original intelligence.
Okay, so this pure consciousness' intelligence, is it a quality that it possesses?
No, it's what it is. It's not a quality. Intelligence is what the nature of consciousness looks like when it is perceived from the perspective of a finite mind. So it is the finite mind calls it intelligence. But intelligence is not a quality of consciousness. Intelligence is consciousness. Intelligence is what consciousness is, pure intelligence. It's not a function that consciousness does. The human mind, we tend to think that intelligence is a function that we may or may not have, or that we have it in degrees. That's only because of the limitations of our mind. And we presume that because our minds are more or less intelligent, then consciousness must have this ultimate faculty of intelligence. No, intelligence is not a faculty of consciousness. It is consciousness. Consciousness and intelligence, pure knowing, are just, and indeed love, are just different names for consciousness.
Okay. So being in this limited form, is it possible to experience pure consciousness's
No.
point of view? Or
No, consciousness
perceive?
doesn't have a point of view.
Yes. So I was
But
coming
because
to-
each of us are points of view. But consciousness is the whole. It's not a point. We are the points of view. We are the points of view through which consciousness is able to perceive its own activity. And it does so because of the configuration of each of our minds. It perceives its own activity as the world that we perceive because of the particular qualities of our mind. But no, consciousness doesn't have a point of view. Consciousness cannot experience a universe. It cannot experience form. The infinite cannot experience the finite. There's no room in the finite for the infinite. All the infinite knows is the infinite. If the infinite wants to know something, I say wants to know, I don't mean to imply that it wants to know, but if the infinite wants to know the finite, it can only do so from a finite perspective. If you fall asleep tonight and you want to experience the streets of Paris, your mind wants to experience the streets of Paris, your mind has the ability to imagine the streets of Paris within itself, but you cannot experience the streets of Paris directly from your bed here in Garrison. You have to forget that you are in bed in Garrison. Your own mind has to forget that it is dreaming. It has to forget that it is creating the streets of Paris within itself. It has to localize itself as a person on the streets of Paris and view the streets of Paris from her perspective. What is wakefulness for awareness is sleep for the finite mind. And what is sleep for awareness is wakefulness for the mind. It's a rendition of the Bhagavad Gita. So no, the finite mind we cannot know the nature of reality if we look outwards at the world, because we view that reality through our limited faculties. The only way we can know the nature of the world is by knowing the nature of ourselves, because we are an emanation of that world. So whatever the world essentially is must be the same as what we essentially are. And there is one aspect of ourself whose knowledge is not mediated through thought and perception, namely the awareness of being. When we are aware of being, that knowledge doesn't go through thinking or through feeling or through perceiving. It is direct. All other knowledge goes through thinking, feeling or perceiving, but our knowledge of ourself is direct. Our knowledge of ourself, that is the self's knowledge of itself, being's awareness of being.